So I recently finished making my first narrative short film, and about half of it includes mixed media animation. I learned a lot from that process, so I thought I'd share the workflow that I found to be useful and encourage you to give it a try yourself. It's such a tactile, expressive and playful way to create some cool visuals. The whole process involves firstly converting video into a series of still frames, then printing those frames, hand editing them with craft tools, and then scanning the pages to be able to then play back the individually embellished frames as video again. In my process, the first step was to export the chosen sections of my film as individual JPEG frames at 8 frames per second of video. I chose 8 frames per second because I find that to be a good balance, where video movements still look quite smooth, but is not as much work as animating the entire 24 or 25 frames per second of video. You can do less than 8 per second if you don't mind a more choppy look, but I personally like 8 or 10. So on Premiere Pro, this is what the export settings would look like, and save the frames into a folder. Next is to arrange all the JPEGs onto a document to be printed. So I found this sneaky feature on Adobe InDesign to make this a lot easier and automate the placement of frames onto document pages rather than doing it manually page by page. You go to Window, then down to Utilities, then select Scripts. Under Application, go to Samples, then JavaScript or UXP script. I don't really know the difference and they both seem to work. Scroll down and double-click Image Catalog. Then select your folder of JPEGs that you just exported and set the rows and columns. For this, I settled on having 3 frames per page, which keeps them quite big on the page, but also obviously saves more paper than 1 frame per page. I was initially going to do 4 per page, but because of the wide aspect ratio of my film, there was a lot of blank space the way that the frames fit, and it would have made more sense to then do 6 frames. But I really wanted to maintain the details of my footage, so I just went with 3. Again, for this, you can definitely put more frames on each page, especially if the animation is for social media or to be viewed on a smaller screen. You could do like 12 per page and really save on printing and paper. So then export this as a PDF and print it out. An interesting and cheaper option could even be to print in black and white and then manually color in bits of it in the hand editing part. I got huge stacks of printing done for my film, over 600 pages of 1,865 frames. And this is the fun part. It can also be tedious and tiring depending on how many frames you're doing, but it's so much more enjoyable editing by hand. I personally didn't go crazy with this part. It would have been cool to do more tearing and more big blocks of color and painting, scratching some of the ink off, etc. But I kept it fairly minimal because it was my first time doing mixed media animation of this scale, and I didn't want to go too far because I can't pull it back or undo it without going and getting it all printed again. Music videos, for example, really suit having a lot of effects and doodles, but mine is a narrative film, so I was a little careful that the visuals wouldn't get too crazy or overwhelming to watch for minutes at a time. After drawing on the printed frames, which took about 4 days, I had a bit of a journey with the scanning part. There are a few different ways you can do it, and I had a few attempts. First, I went to the local library and paid to use the scanner by the hour, but each page was taking about 4 minutes to scan at 600 dpi, which is the resolution that I needed to match my 4K footage of my film. But yeah, 4 minutes was too slow for the 600 plus pages I had to scan. So next, I tried a bigger scanner that had an auto feed option, so each page didn't need to be scanned manually. But now the pages were being scanned too fast, and even at 600 dpi, the quality wasn't good enough to capture the detail and texture. It was meant more for text documents rather than images, so the result was just a little bit too pixelated for my liking. So attempt 3 was to photograph the images at home, which can be a good option. I set up the tripod and camera on the table and put down some masking tape to place each page in the same spot and started taking photos. If you have a good lighting setup where you can keep it consistent, this could work well for you, but I just decided to try scanning one last time. So I went to a different library and luckily their scanners were perfect. The scans were great quality and took half a minute per page. So about 9 hours and an audiobook later, the pages were in digital form again. I saved each page as a JPEG image, so I just dropped the scans back into a sequence in my Premiere project. Now, this is currently only showing 1 out of every 3 frames, since I have 3 frames per scanned page. The way I went about splitting this was to first of all change the duration of the images to be the correct frame rate. So there is a bit of maths involved. Since I chose to do 8 frames per second and the sequence is at 24 frames, each paper frame needs to be the length of 3 video frames, as 24 divided by 8 is 3. So I selected all, and to begin with, since we have 3 images per page, I made each page duration the length of 9 frames with ripple edit selected. Then selected all pages again, and this time I made it the correct duration of 3 and unselected the ripple edit option. So we've got spaces between. And then I copied the pages onto a new layer, and then again, so that there were 3 of each page. And then it was just a matter of aligning each layer with either the top frame, the middle frame, or the lower frame of each page. Once I had the top frame centered, I copied those motion settings onto all the other clips on that same layer. Then on the next layer, centered the middle frame and again copied those motion settings to all the other clips on that second layer. And finally aligned the lower frame, copied and pasted to the clips on the third layer. And there we go, every frame is now visible and the animation can be watched as video. The motion settings most likely won't be perfect on all the clips and you might get a bit of jitter and white borders popping up on some frames. Depending on what you like the look of, you could leave it that way or individually shift the alignment of the frames where needed, which is what I did. For shots that are static and didn't have much camera movement, I did this to help reduce jitter. I selected the frames of that shot, I nested them, and then applied warp stabilizer with the settings on no motion and position scale rotation. So hopefully that helps you too. And that's the whole mixed media process. I really hope this was helpful. Please give the video a like if it was, and feel free to ask any questions below. Definitely also let me know if you give it a try. My short film will soon be available to watch on this channel, so subscribe if you'd like to see that. But yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you next time.